Hello and welcome to our webinar today. The Washington County Chamber of Commerce is excited that you are a part of today's webinar, and we're really excited to have Brice Milliorn of Edward Jones Financial, and he's going to talk with us today about staying healthy financially. I know that is something that is near and dear to everyone's heart, given the current market and futures in the last couple of months. So my name is Wendy Ragonis, and I want to officially welcome you. We're pleased today as well to have our Young Professionals organization here at the Chamber sponsor and host our webinar. If you're not very familiar with our Young Professionals organization, it's a group of professionals in our community, typically under the age of 45-ish or under, and they get together for various activities throughout the community. And in addition, they have some happy hours. They have a lunch mob where they go and visit local chamber members for lunch, and they'll pick member restaurants to go and visit, and so they have a whole lot of fun. I'm past the age of 45, but I still sometimes go and attend and enjoy the fellowship with that group. So if you're not familiar with them, I encourage you to check out the Young Professionals organization, also known as YPO. So we are a little bit delayed in our start this morning. We appreciate your patience. As you can see, kind of scrolling across your screen, we've got Shay in the background working all the bells and whistles along with Sarah Bryant and Brice's team as well. So I'm going to check in with them and see if we're ready to start this morning. Brice, are you on the line?
I am. Can you hear me?
We can hear you wonderfully. Great. So we're excited that you're here.
Shay's getting the presentation up. So
perfect.
Sorry, we don't use Teams at our office, but there's all kinds of WebExes and Zooms that everybody uses.
Right.
That's not one that we used. So.
Well, no worries. And I know that in this new world of online webinars and online meetings, we're all trying to kind of find our way. I think a lot of people are very familiar with Zoom. I know that's a popular one. Some people are using Microsoft Teams. I know there's several others, Skype for business. So it's like, yeah, trying to find the platform that fits all. So we appreciate your patience with us as we get everything up and running this morning for you so you can present to us. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Brice. Shay, I think you are pulling up his PowerPoint.
I received his document as a PDF, and I'm not able to share the entire document. It just lets me share the first page of that PDF. So I'm hoping that I can get another format of that, like PowerPoint or something.
Well, and I can do it without the PowerPoint. It probably won't be as beneficial, but let me try one more, and then I will just get started.
Okay, great.
I know I can send this. So you can't do a PDF? Is that what you were saying, Shay?
It opens the first screen with your logo, and then it says can't read document.
Okay. Well, here's one to get us started. I'm sending it your way.
Perfect. Well, and hopefully that will work, and we can get our. Now, I just wanted to familiarize everyone, if you're not familiar with Teams, and if you are online, and we do have some callers that have just called in, so they're not going to be able to see the screen, but we also have folks that are online that do have access to questions. So if you are viewing the webinar, you can see that there is a little dialogue box or a little comment box, and it's the Q&A section. So if you do have questions for Brice, you can go ahead and click on that box and type in your questions, and Shay will be monitoring those and will let you know if there are questions. Of course, you can always unmute yourself and ask a question as well, but we prefer that you use this little pop-up dialog box for your questions. So, and we'll have plenty of time, I know, at the end, but if you do have a question throughout the presentation on a specific topic, you can go ahead and use that dialog box. So I am starting to see things on our screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brice, the PDF I got.
All right, and I
I'll
sent you
second.
another one after I'm done with this one, Shay, to put up.
Okay.
But let me get started. Thanks for everybody's patience. And I did want to start with something to kind of get us going. We get a lot of people that are worried that this is something different, that this economy that we're seeing, the stay-at-home orders, that this, it is something new, but we have been through crisis like this before. And, that's part of the staying healthy financially is we're worried about our health physically, but also on the financial side, definitely worried about maybe how your finances are doing. So what I have here is a couple, I think 9 different Time magazine, I guess, front page of the magazine. As you can see here, the big headache, the economy, and this Time magazine article was from 1974. If I pulled that date off there and told you this was a current Time magazine, you'd probably believe me. But this is to go without saying that we've been through areas where we've had headaches in the economy. Shay, if you'd go to the next one. The next one's talking about Alan Greenspan and the Committee to Save the World. And we've put some committees like that out there before as well, and it's no different than it is before. Scroll down just a little bit the other way, Shay. Shay, are you there?
She's scrolling down.
All right, keep going. One more. All right, the third one there, if you could get to there, is the economy. Is there light at the end of the tunnel? And that's from 1992. Again, a lot of y'all might be wondering, is there light at the end of the tunnel? Are we ever going to get through this? The next one is the world over a barrel of oil. There's been a lot about oil in the finance industry lately, and a lot of concerns there, and a lot of industries in Washington County that deal with oil, and that's from 1979, but it's a headline that we're seeing again today. The next one is how bad is it, and what gives on Wall Street, and it talks about the recession, and that is from 1992 as well. So again, just more stuff that we're hearing. The next one with the bull and the bear on it has, that's from 1962. The bear seems to be overpowering the bull there. So again, headlines that we're seeing lately. And then the crash, the big one that says the crash. After a wild week on Wall Street, the world is different. Sounds like something we've seen in the last couple months, isn't it? And that's from 1987. You're about 2 behind. And then how to survive the slump. This is talking about families and how to get through some of these financial hardships that some of us might be seeing.
Hey,
that's
Brice.
from just 2001. Yep.
Hey, we're seeing it. You're seeing a little bit of a delay on the screen, but as you talk, I'm keeping up with your slides. So just keep that in mind. Thank you.
Well, I don't know if it's delayed for everybody though. So, and then the last one, the one that we all probably remember is our last crisis is the World Trade Center bombings, and that's something that it's kind of like the Pearl Harbor of our day, where it's something that we're all going to remember. And my point with bringing these vivid and graphic pictures up is they shut down the market for 3 to 4 days that week of September 11th. And it was bad, and people thought we would never recover. And really, by the end of the year, the market had recovered to above what it was post-September 11th. And if you'd go one more, Shay, to George Bush, this is what I remember is if you're an avid baseball fan, probably the turning point to all this was, yes, they shut down the market. Yes, we were all scared. Yes, they shut down all flights for a week or so, but we still had the World Series a couple months later, and it was kind of the turning point. And that's what we need to get to as an economy and as a world is we're going to get through this, and there's a lot of emotional and financial things that we can do to help get y'all through that, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And Shay, if you would pull up that second piece, perfect. Okay, so we've got 10 what we call rules of the road, and these are rules that we've found in almost our 100-year history at Edward Jones on things to follow that can help you get through crisis like this and help you stay healthy financially. So the first rule that we'll talk about today is you need to develop a strategy. There's a great quote out there that I'm sure y'all have all heard, but a goal without a plan is just a dream or just a wish. I've heard it that way as well. And we find that true as well. Let's say your goal may be saving for retirement. Let's say your goal may be putting your kid through college. Well, you need a plan in place. And you've got to figure, what's most important for you? Is it retiring one day? Is it putting those kids through college? And put it down in writing and document those goals. And definitely that's so important. Y'all have all heard the stats behind it that you're more than likely to actually accomplish a goal if you actually write it down. And that's what we found as well with your financials. So one of the first steps in staying healthy financially is develop your strategy. Rule number 2 is understanding risk. Risk is a lot more than the ups and downs of the market. We've seen plenty of that lately. We've seen plenty of people scared to death. But how much risk do you take is what you need to address. An easy thing to say is you've got to be able to sleep at night, knowing how much risk you're taking with that, and reevaluate that from time to time. The easiest way we put that is, we all drive, so we all know speed limits and how fast we travel down that highway. Well, with risk and investments, you can kind of put it in those same terms. So you can take 5 miles an hour worth of risk, or you can go 90 miles an hour down that investment highway. And we both know if you're going 90 miles an hour, yes, you may get there quicker, but the risk of you getting there safely, the risk of you getting there without getting a ticket is very high. So somewhere in the middle, you as an investor, you as with your finance accounts, need to find a happy medium that makes you comfortable with the amount of risk that you're taking. So that's rule number 2. Rule number 3 is diversify for a solid foundation. We're very, very big on diversification. We feel that is one of the ways that we can help mitigate that risk is by diversifying you across many different companies, diversifying you across many different areas in the economy, so different industries, different companies within those industries. And we found there's a ton of benefits to that. I'll show you a couple here in a second. And it's really that mixture of investments that matter. And we've got some stats that show it's not necessarily how, which stock you pick, so to speak, and all that. It comes down to just having a lot of different ones in different areas. So we've got to look at that. If you would go to the next slide, I kind of go a little bit more in depth to that rule. And this is, I can't remember which one I put, so I got to wait for it to change. Is this the pie chart one, Shay?
Stick with quality.
Is it the one with all the colors on it?
Stick with quality. What is quality?
Oh yeah, I had to send you the other. Never mind. Well, so I will just talk about this out loud then. There are times in the market where different companies do better than others. A prime example we got through talking about is Zoom and some of those companies and Microsoft that provide WebEx or web conferencing like we're doing right now. Obviously, in the last couple months, they've done really, really well. Netflix has done really, really well. So there's different times in an economy or in a recovery that different companies are going to do better. And we don't always know that. So, if you are heavy in oil and you had all your money in oil, Well, over the last month, you've probably seen your portfolio drop by 50+%. Where if we would have had some in oil and some in communications and some in Microsoft with technology and some in, like a Walmart that deals with consumers and those type of things, you're spreading that risk out like we talked about before, and diversifying yourself, which definitely helps mitigate some of those performances. So the other stat I was going to share is 90% of the return that you will get from your portfolio comes from how you're allocated or how you're diversified. So back to that, it's not necessarily picking 100 different stocks or 20 different stocks. It's picking those stocks in different areas and diversifying yourself. All right, enough about Rule 3. Let's move to Rule 4, like she has on the screen. But the other one is once you start putting a plan in place, you know about diversification, and you start picking these investments, our rule of thumb is stick to quality over the next big thing. And the reason we say that is long-term, quality is what matters. And there's a lot of fads out there. There's a lot of different new investments that everybody thinks going to take off. Like the big one in the last year was, cannabis and all that type of stuff. And, those companies just have not made any money. So that was a fad that's kind of, gone away, so to speak. So fundamentals, companies with great fundamentals is what we think, and don't reach for those companies that pay 20 and 30% dividends. It's too much. If it sounds like too much of a good thing, it probably is. So a good analogy on that is, back to vehicles. We all drive vehicles out there, and you don't go buy and sell a vehicle every month. You don't normally go and buy, sell a vehicle every year. But if you get that vehicle and you kick the tires and you change the tires and you change the oil, you've bought a quality vehicle, and you don't have to change that out every year because it was quality. And that's how we approach investing with a lot of things. If you buy a quality investment, so you buy a Walmart or you buy a Lowe's, that's a quality company that you shouldn't have to change companies and get a different one every 5 minutes. And that's why we say stick to quality over the fads and all that type of stuff. So rule number 5 is invest for the long term. Timing in the market and time in the market are two different things. So what we mean by that is, should I get out now? Should I get in now? It's really a matter of how long you're in that market. The longer you're in it, the better you'll do. And over the long haul, the people that stick with it, the people that don't jump in and jump out, do the best. So buying and holding like this doesn't mean you shouldn't review it, but definitely invest for the long term is our rule number 5. So rule number 6 is have realistic expectations. So when you're out there and you've put your plan in place and you've invested in quality and you've diversified your portfolio, we feel that to stay healthy financially, you've got to have some realistic expectations. And what we mean by that is if you're investing in CDs, you should not expect to get a 6% return. And on the flip side, if you're investing in stocks, you should realistically think or know in the back of your mind that at some point, those stocks are not going to look so great. There's going to be times where they're down, and there's going to be times where you want to get out. But if you've kind of gone by some of these rules that we've talked about, you should have already known that there is a risk. Let's go back to that miles per hour. If you're going 70 miles an hour down that investment highway, there's a realistic expectation that you could be in a crash or that you could lose some money at some point. So having realistic expectations is definitely key in investing, and that's our rule number 6. Rule number 7 is maintain your balance. So if you just did all these rules and you put a portfolio together and then you came back 20 years later and that's the first time you've looked at it, that account's going to be all over the place. That account, you may have had money in Amazon and it's tripled since then, and you may have money in Microsoft and it's done very well. But what happens over time is it gets out of balance. You'll have too much of that company because it's grown so high. So a lot of times what happens is it's kind of like the old V8 commercial, V8 vegetable drink. You know, your portfolio is leaning really heavy to one side because your portfolio has too much of that one stock. And what happens if something happens to that stock, you've got the majority of your portfolio. So we are big on maintaining your balance. If there's something that's out of alignment and you're supposed to be taking so much risk and now you're taking more, then you need to correct that so that if something happens, like has happened over the past couple months, you know, that will help mitigate some losses and mitigate some of the financial turmoil that you might feel. All right, rule number 8, prepare for the unexpected. So at times, this is kind of rest our case here because, you know, a lot of this that we're talking about out here in the industry, a lot of this was unexpected. The COVID-19, we probably, if I would have told you in January that this was would have happened, you would have told me I was crazy. So definitely there's times like this, September 11th or any of those type of events that's totally unexpected. And you need to establish that foundation, like we were talking about before, and expect those things, but also prepare for them. And a couple of ways that you can prepare for them are emergency funds. So if you have a proper emergency fund, which is typically 3 to 6 months of expenses in some type of liquid investment like cash, money market, short-term CDs, when things like this happen, you can lean on that emergency fund versus leaning on credit cards or leaning on your retirement account and liquidating that early, or leaning on investments that are for other goals besides getting you out of a hole. So probably one of the most important rules is rule number 8, and preparing for that unexpected. These aren't in any particular order, but it almost needs to be rule number 1 because that's one of the first things that you need to expect, or the first things that you need to establish is a emergency type of fund so that you can be prepared financially when things like this happen. Okay, other things to prepare for is like life insurance and things like that. So if there's a death in the family and you're needing to replace income from a spouse, you have that plan in place as well. So rule number 9, 2 more, is focus on what you control. So you cannot control the market. You cannot control how well Walmart does in earnings. You cannot control, the demands from the government as far as you can't go out to work or you have to wear a mask type of thing. So there's a ton of things in life that you can't control. And what we've talked about some of these time-tested principles today. A lot of these things you can control. You can control how much risk you're taking. You can control if you have a plan in place. You can control how much you have in one investment and if you need to rebalance that investment. So there's a lot of things we can control, those are the type of things that we need to focus on, and focus on that strategy that you've put in place for that plan that you've put in place. Probably I spend most of my time as an advisor dealing with people's emotions as far as financial, and that we call it, we're a behavioral coach or behavioral financial coach, because when the market does what it did, people get scared and they want to jump out and they want to not invest anymore. And essentially what they're doing is they're getting out of that investment at the absolute worst time. They're getting out of that investment at a very low point where you really want to sell an investment at a high point. So a lot of our investors, we had plenty of conversations to calm them down, to stick to the plan that we have in place and understand that, yes, Walmart or a Home Depot or a Lowe's or an Apple yes, their earnings, they're not making as much money. Yes, they had to shut down stores. Yes, they had to put plans in place to deal with this COVID that's cost them money, but they're still quality companies. They're still back to that quality pickup. We just need to kick the tires and make sure we change the oil on those companies to make sure they're still a quality investment. But at the end of the day, I'm still using Apple. I'm still having to pay my AT&T bill. I'm still going to Walmart. I'm still going to Home Depot from time to time. It may be less than before, but those companies are still going to be there. So focus on what you control. Understand that these companies will bounce back, and kind of don't fret the small things. So in summary on that rule number 9, the clients and the people that stayed invested even through the low in the market, which was late March, they have been rewarded with a substantial increase again back in the market. And that's really the benefit of staying put, is you were able to recoup some of those losses by staying invested. And you know, the rule of thumb, or the principle there that people say, is kind of don't follow the crowd. So if somebody, don't follow the herd, if somebody, the whole nation is getting out of the market, well, that's probably the best time to do it. If everybody, and we say everybody and their grandmother is investing, it's probably not the best time to invest, because it's probably at a high mark. So, all right, rule number 10, the final rule, is review the strategy that you have in place regularly. So to stay, it's kind of like you and I driving from here to Colorado. We don't just punch that in the GPS and then just start driving and never check if we're on the right route, or if there's been a route change, or if we need to slow down for construction, or if we're on one of those nice speedways we can go 85. So you have to review that strategy and that plan regularly, and to properly stay the course. So it's a lot more than just reviewing those investments. You just like a doctor or anything like that, or back to the car analogy, you have to have periodic checkups in your portfolio, just like you would in your health and things like that. So those are the what we call the 10 rules of the road. A lot of them are very simple, straightforward, time-tested strategies and things that Edward Jones, over its almost 100-year time span, has kind of put together. And I think, you know, us being worried as a physical being healthy and staying away from the COVID things, there's also the side on the financial, and staying healthy financially is just as important. So Shay, Wendy, Sarah, that's kind of our presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions or expand on anything. And again, I apologize for some of the technical difficulties on our side.
No, I think this was great. Those slides that you showed in the beginning, the Time magazine covers, that was very powerful, Brice.
Yeah.
It kind of puts it into perspective that
it does. We've seen headlines like this before. It's just it's a different, you know, we're dealing with COVID versus a terrorist threat versus, you know, just all kinds of things in history. So
I have a question. I'll start us off with the question that I have. What is your opinion and your perspective on the impact to the market and to the economy with all of the stimulus money that's being flooded into and injected into local economies across the country?
So I guess twofold. One, long term, we're eventually going to have to pay for it, and that's going to come from a number of ways. They could increase taxes. We could see inflation rise, meaning like price of milk and oil may go up. But short term, we kind of had some of the stimulus type of stuff in our back pocket. I say we, the Fed, the Federal Reserve, and the government, because they used it in 2008 during the financial crisis. That's a lot of the ways that they stabilized the market in 2008. So we'd used some of these things before, where we get the stimulus checks, or the Federal Reserve is injecting money into the loan and banking industry and it stabilizes it. So I think if that were not to have happened, we would in no way, we would be in a huge financial hurt, small business wise locally, all the way up to big businesses that are getting stimulus money, because it's when the number one driver of the economy, I think it's 70+% of the driver of the economy is you and I consuming goods. So going to Walmart and buying something, and it's a trickle down because Walmart gets some profit, the people that produce those products get profit, but when you shut down the consumer and they cannot go outside and spend as much money as they used to, granted we probably all use the wonderful delivery services now, which I think will stay for the most part, that's the biggest driver of the economy kind of being handcuffed home. So, they had to inject a lot of that stimulus and those things into the economy to keep us afloat. So I would be scared to see if it didn't happen, but long term, there are going to be some aftershock ramifications that we're going to have to deal with and basically pay for those eventually. So I hope that answers your question.
Oh, it does. We have another question. Yeah, so what should people do with the stimulus money if they don't need it right now?
Good question. I think it comes back to some of those rules that we talked about. The first place I would check is, make sure that the individual has 3 to 6 months, and I would probably lean closer to the 6 month time span right now. 3 to 6 months is really if you're a single income earner or joint income earner. If you're joint, you need to have closer to the 6. But first thing is make sure your emergency fund is where it needs to be. And then second, kind of get into your mindset how willing you are to take risk with that money. If you don't want to lose that money whatsoever and you want it to just be there if you need it in 3 months because you're getting laid off or you have hours cut and you're not making as much, then taking risk in the market may not be the place for you. So I would stick to cash, money market, CDs, because those are safe. A lot of them are guaranteed. They're not going to make you a lot, but they're also not going to lose you any money. And then if you are willing to take a little bit of risk, I would just apply some of those rules that we talked about today. You're going to want to make sure you're diversified. You're going to want to stick with quality. You're going to want to have realistic expectations that this money could fluctuate. I could buy a great company like Apple and they go down for a little bit, but long term, which was another rule that we talked about, I know that Apple or one of those type of companies are going to be great. So that's probably what I would stick with it, but kind of run through some of those rules if you wanted to. And Shay, you're welcome. Shay or Wendy, you're welcome to share that PDF if they want that. That is a shareable document that they can have. So.
That's great. Thank you, Brice, for that.
Sure.
Shay, do you see any more questions?
No, I don't see any more questions right now.
Well, Brice, we appreciate your time today, and like I said, those especially those first few slides, I found those very powerful and very reassuring. It's sometimes hard to get caught up in the moment, but yes, we have definitely been down economies that were not performing the way we would all like for them to. So
absolutely.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time, and I want to thank the YPO organization again for sponsoring us today, and also looking forward to next week. We are going to have a resource from Baylor Scott and White to discuss mental health and coping with COVID-19, which is something I think many of us are looking forward to as this starts to wear on us emotionally, financially, all across the board. So thanks, Brice, for being here today.
Absolutely.
And helping us stay financially healthy. And we do appreciate your time.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah.
Y'all stay safe.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Take care.